I am called SolarPop. I am not of this world. The world from which I came exiled me for my beliefs. My world is similar to your Earth. In our solar system, there are 2 inhabited planets. For 2½ centuries, my planet fought with invaders from the sister planet. They were greater in number, their technology was superior. But from among the low ranks of our military arose a great warrior. This great warrior developed and instilled in us one. As one, we began to defeat the invaders in battles. In a brilliant military strategy, executed as one, we commandeered their primary fleet of spacecraft. Soon thereafter, we took the war to their planet. Their leaders were unprepared for such a quick reversal in military advantage. Within months of our arrival on their planet, their leaders offered their unconditional surrender. There was great rejoicing on my planet. Banners were hung in public places. Huge crowds chanted. The words were simple: "We are one." What became known as the Great Victory was followed by a golden age that lasted for decades. We were a happy and prosperous people. Our technology advanced exponentially. We began to search for life far beyond the stars, near to our own solar system. Over time, my people drifted away from one, the ethos that led to the Great Victory, our rapid technological advancement, our prosperity, our greatness as a single world civilization, our happiness. Many among us had forgotten that these earned treasures had required great sacrifice to obtain. These people argued that all should enjoy equally what we had accomplished, that all persons should be provided with what they needed to pursue their happiness. This thinking devolved to thoughts of, enjoy today, for tomorrow may not come. Others argued that such a policy is unsustainable and would rob our descendants of their futures. Initially, these arguments were made in sincerity. Over time, the arguments became little more than the basis for political advantage and personal gain. Members of the 2 factions refused to open their minds to the fact that there was truth and benefit in what each side was saying. Their selfish motivations for their one-dimensional views eventually led to a great civil war that encompassed our entire planet. The military leaders of each faction implemented a perverted version of one within their armies. As such, there can only be one outcome. They will battle until only one side remains. I was born after the Civil War started. I did not understand at the time, but during my childhood, my grandmother, who had participated in the Great Victory as a young woman, instilled in me the code of one. Her teachings made my life as a child and a young adult difficult, but later in life I began to see what others around me could not. Throughout my mandatory 60-year military service, I saw how certain aspects of one were taken out of context to motivate soldiers to commit atrocities against their own kind. Very few soldiers survive their mandatory military service. Those who do survive are permitted a few minutes of time on the world broadcast to speak freely. The survivors are promoted as great heroes. In hindsight, it is probably less about honoring the survivor and more about preventing the young from acting on their thoughts of running away in an attempt to avoid conscription. Toward the end of my military service, I decided to use my retirement speech, if I survived to celebrate that day, to remind my world of the true meaning of one. For the next 10 years, I spent all my available time working on what I would say. My hope of giving that speech gave me a passion to survive every battle, to survive day by day. Most who survive their military service are high-ranking officers who have spent much of their careers in the safety of highly secured administrative or command bunkers. Generally, these survivors are politically savvy. They know what to say to whom and when to say it in their goal of self-promotion. Their retirement speeches all seem to have the same series of impassioned phrases that are void of any real meaning. Those who survive the rigors of the battlefield during their service are usually physically broken and mentally damaged. The speeches of these warriors are always short. Some will simply recite some decades-old patriotic slogan. Others with tear-filled eyes and unable to speak will simply salute, turn, and walk away. I survived my military service. I gave my speech. The tension in the large auditorium created a dead silence for the few minutes I spoke. At the conclusion of my speech, the silence continued, and was then abruptly broken by a thunderous applause. I felt an immense sense of accomplishment, a connection with everyone present in that auditorium and those watching the broadcast around the world. It took all the willpower I had developed during my 110 years of life to maintain my military bearing. But a couple of seconds into the applause, I saluted my audience, I turned, and I walked away. As I left the stage, security officers met me. They escorted me to a large, luxurious conference room. While waiting alone in that conference room, I began to look at the pictures of the retired senior officers that encircled the room. It did not surprise me that only high-ranking officers were honored. My people are no longer one. To pass more time, I reflected on my life since deciding to use my retirement speech to remind my world that we had strayed from one. It seemed odd that I had devoted the last 10 years of my life to an event that lasted only a few minutes. Or is it odd? In our youth, we study for years to participate in a graduation ceremony that may last for only an hour. A female is pregnant for months, but the actual birth often takes less than a few minutes. No, how I spent those 10 years of my life is not so strange. As I sat alone in the conference room, I had no fear of what was to come. That I had proven myself to be one, that I would always be one, and that I was a warrior, those were my only thoughts, and these thoughts gave me a courage that I had not experienced before. Sometime later, several senior military officers and government officials entered the room. Our time together in the fine wood-trimmed and leather-adorned conference room was short. They had decided my fate prior to entering the room. I was given a choice. I could return to the studio and state that my sense of patriotism compelled me to re-enlist for another 20 years. Or I could volunteer for a planet discovery program and be immediately sent alone to a recently discovered planet that seemed suitable for our species. I have been on my assignment planet for several months. The inhabitants call it Earth. They are a fragmented people. Small groups fight one against the other on the battlefield. What I experience here parallels my grandmother's description of my own people on my home planet before the invasion that led to the great victory, and to one. At present, I am with a faction that call themselves the FTR. Beneath their individualistic acts and conquests for self-aggrandizement, I see good people with great potential. When I speak, they understand my words, but they do not often comprehend the meaning the words are intended to convey. It is lonely here, but believing I am living in the history my grandmother described to me when I was a child brings me some comfort. Now I am one in a way I had not previously considered.